Absolutely huge. Does this work? No, it doesn't. Hey, shall we bring in our guest?
We shall.
Ladies and gentlemen, clap him in, please. Brad Hill from the University of Trials and Trials Rising. Good sir, welcome to the Game on Australia podcast.
Thank you for having me. I clapped myself in as well. That was cool, right?
Yeah, 100%. We do it. We do it all the time. So please,
Just entering the room.
Yes. Okay, now, hang on a sec. People are saying we've got an echo. Hang on. I'm just going to do something.
An echo.
Got an echo. Brad.
Yes.
Talk to me again.
Hello.
Yeah, no, that's good. I've got rid of the echo. Yes! Yes! That's quite good. Brad, seriously, welcome and sincerely thank you so much for your time. I think we actually shouted you out a couple of episodes ago when we were sort of scrolling through and doing our show, and I said, "Oh, Dan, University of Trials is watching." This is very exciting, and we got a shout out to one of our very own, the historian.
Oh, the historian again.
Who put the pieces of the puzzle together to get you onto the show tonight because we wanted to catch up and just have a chat and just shine the light on indies as we usually do, but also see what's happening out in the space. But Brad, before we get into all of that, tell us about yourself and how you essentially got into the industry in the first place.
All right. Well, one of the things I think is worth mentioning is that this is all sort of a part-time gig I do after hours outside of work. It's probably more a hobby that I've kind of taken to a pretty extreme degree rather than it being a career. I work full-time in the insurance industry in Sydney and kind of just sort of stumbled into this in my spare time just because I enjoy gaming. So
that's really cool.
The insurance, so do people, like we work in radio and it's not that it's not that far-fetched to talk about games and esports and stuff around sort of radio people because, you know, it's pop culture, radio, that sort of stuff, right? But I know if I was still working in the family fish business, like gaming chat wouldn't necessarily happen. So how does it go for you working in insurance?
You kind of end up feeling as if you've got multiple lives. It's kind of weird where it's now got to the point where they've collided a little bit, and I kind of can go to work and tell people what I do because we might sort of unpack some of this stuff. But I've ended up sort of traveling around the world to US and Finland a bunch of times. You end up getting to a point you kind of have to explain to work, hey, there's something else going on here. It's been pretty crazy sort of managing those two sort of pretty separate aspects of my life.
Hey, boss, can I have 3 weeks leave? Why? E3? What's E3? Well, let me tell you.
And it's a true story. I got a call on a Thursday, just a random Thursday night from a bloke in Finland, and he said, "When can you get here?" And I think it was a Saturday night, and he's like, "Can you get here for like Thursday next week?" Yeah. And I had to book my flights. I think I flew out on the Tuesday because I think you lose a day going to Europe.
Yes.
So I got to work Monday morning, and I was like, "Hey, boss, just want to let you know that I'll work tomorrow for a week and a half, and I'll be in Europe like tomorrow after."
Yeah, unbelievable. So was this 2018?
Oh no, I couldn't even tell you which trip that was. No, so so we might have to sort of go back a couple of steps and just sort of make all sort of connections and
let's
maybe
do it.
For
Let's
a lot
do
of people. Let's assume they have no idea who I am because I suspect that's the case. Let's go with this. So effectively, Trials Rising is sort of my thing, and probably for the last, 2013, so however many maths years that is from now, let's call it 6. I've been doing YouTube tutorials about a game and the Trials sort of franchise for probably the last sort of 3 iterations of that game. And through my interactions with creating the YouTube tutorial stuff, I've ended up sort of creating relationships with the development team, and the short version of the story is that and now I'm kind of in the latest game, which is Trials Rising, that came out in February this year.
You're in it.
I am in it.
What do you mean you're in it? What does that mean?
I am the tutorial guy is probably the way to talk about it. So it's kind of funny. I spent 2 years of my life creating all of the content. So sort of the design, pitching the ideas, to writing scripts, to designing the levels, to everything involved with sort of the tutorial content within this game. And it's sort of a game that's very physics based. So there's a lot of nuance to the controls, and it's a lot of sort of complexity to it from a game that's simple on face value, but actually gets quite complex when you get into it. I spent 2 years of my life on what most people would consider the most boring aspect of the game, that's also optional and you can skip over. So
Yeah.
still trying to figure out or if this is like the coolest thing I've ever done. So
that is amazing. Yeah, but still, the opportunity to work on a game, particularly one that you are so incredibly passionate about, must have been almost like a second skin.
Yeah, it was cool, and it's weird in that it kind of gradually happened. So even a year before I was asked to work on the game, I bounced the idea off once or twice when I was over in the studio one time about like maybe doing something like this with no solid plans, but just a thought. And even at the point they approached me, I think I'd already I've been a huge fan. So this is probably 2015. I'd already been a fan for like 6 years. I think the first time I went to the studio was even before the YouTube stuff started. So I was already like a hugely invested fan and had already built up some relationships. So by the time it came about, it was almost kind of okay, you finally got around to asking me. Not to seem ungrateful, but it just kind of it was just such a gradual progression over years and years and years of sort of just passion and effort and stupid amounts of hours just having fun doing this stuff. That it kind of organically happened and it just kind of made a lot of sense. So, but again, stupidly grateful for the opportunity and to have a company that's a Finnish company but the Ubisoft studio reach out and say, hey, how about we just get a random Aussie bloke to come and do all of our tutorial stuff.
Brad, was that the hope though? Like you pump. I mean, so when we first started this podcast 3 years ago, right? We did it as a bit tongue-in-cheek, but there was a bit of seriousness to it to eventually get to a means to an end of, hey, how cool would it be to get free video games sent? Right? Like that's, you know what I mean? Like that's, yes.
I've told this to a handful of people. The absolute primary reason of me actually starting any of this stuff was to get free video games.
Yes!
That's
Brilliant.
the peak. If you're a gamer, right? We love games. We want to play every game imaginable. It's an expensive hobby if you get into it.
Yes.
And it's like, and if I just knew those people that I see them on Twitter and they like bragging about all their free stuff, I'm like, I want to be that.
I want to
guy.
be that guy. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. So, well, anything else comes as being a bonus.
Yeah.
And so no, I totally relate. I think most gamers can relate to that. A free game is like the biggest thing you aspire to, which is pretty.
This is what I bloody love about gaming is that, this is akin to you, Brad. Let's say you were a guitarist and you were teaching people how to play Kings of Leon songs on YouTube as a tutorial thing. And then Kings of Leon ask you to appear on the next album.
Yeah,
that would never happen in music.
Join our next tour. It'll be fine. Jump in.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's such a big, that's a massive thing.
It's a huge achievement.
I probably should point out the stage name that I go by, because if anyone's here that knows me, Brad is not the name that I go by. I go by Professor Fat Shady.
Yes. What a
name. So we've got to get some of the professors out and the shadies out in the chat. I think that makes it feels a bit awkward talking about Brad.
Yeah.
All right.
Speaking of,
do you want us to call you Professor Fat Shady then from here on in? We can. 100%.
Well, look, Professor or Shady is fine. I've had some people shorten it and just call me Fat, and I'm like, that's a bit rough.
Oh, you poor bloke.
Or Fat Shade.
Fat Shade. So can you tell us where Fat Shady came from? Exactly.
Yeah, I can. So, what was it? Probably, I want to say about 19 years ago. Well before any of this stuff happened, I was writing musical parodies, effectively like comedy send-ups of rap songs. Eminem was I was a big fan of his stuff at the time.
Yep.
I effectively was a fatter version of him making jokes. So Fat Shady kind of was just the alter ego to the Slim Shady that was out and about. So I kind of sense at the time. And then when I started joining gaming communities, that was the logical name to keep using.
Yeah.
And then I started the University of Trials. I was like, well, how do I make that sound smarter?
Yeah.
So let's put Professor in front of it, and the legend was born.
I've got to admit that because my gaming name is Captain Albion, which is my old band name. And when I chose Captain Albion, I thought, wouldn't it be cool if my original band went bananas in 3-4 years' time, and then people are gaming with Captain Albion the band, right?
Yeah.
Never happened. I mean, I'm still just a garage musician, but that was the intent, yeah.
There's a lot of parallel lines between like ourselves and dear Professor Fat Shady here, like because got stuck into this, the hope of one day the auspicious task of getting a free game sent to you and writing parodies, like we write parodies as well.
Yeah, we do, yeah.
Mate, it's the sort of industry that attracts people, you know, like us. Like attracts those creative types, maybe misfits a little bit, and that's what's so beautiful about it. What can you tell us about some of the people that are in your community, the University of Trials?
I mean, look, the trials community, and it's kind of weird, the trials community and University of Trials to me are kind of one and the same in the sense that I kind of see my role. Yeah, I got to the point with my trials writing, because trials as a game is quite a sort of a competitive game, but you tend to be focused more on sort of, you know, besting yourself and then sharing that experience with others rather than competing against others directly. Yeah. So it's a very sort of supportive community. And part of what I see my broader role and my goals with the University of Trials as YouTube and everything else is really just to sort of foster that positivity and that desire to help others. And everybody in the trials community that you reach out to, you know, there'll be someone streaming with 2 people in chat, and someone will be there helping them from the trials community, because that's just who we are. And I'll pop in there, and they'll be, I mean, we'll know each other. So it's a tight community, but it's such a amazing group of people that are, you know, not just Aussies, people from all over the world. There's probably some sitting in here in your chat as well. But it's such just an amazing group of people that have such a specific focus. Like it's kind of a game that you have to understand, but once it clicks, it's you can sort of play it for life. You play it in between all other games, and it's something you just keep coming back to. So yeah, the big thing for me was just about trying to foster and just trying to grow that, and just sort of make sure that there's another place for us to kind of get together and talk about the thing we love.
Right. Trials. You mentioned something that you have to sort of learn and understand, and then the penny drops for people who are watching this or listening to this on the catch up. Can you explain exactly what Trials Rising is to them?
Sure. So it's visually, it's a motorbike game. When you look at it, it's a motorbike game where you're riding from left to right. The controls are incredibly simple in the sense that you have, on controller, it's right trigger for accelerate, left trigger for brake, and the left analog stick leans the body weight left and right. Incredibly, like literally pick up and play, anybody can start it. The subtlety comes into the physics that's underneath it. And what you realize when you get into it is that it's far less about motorbikes. Motorbike just happens to be the vehicle they've chosen. And obviously there was a trial sport that it's kind of based on loosely. But at its core, it's kind of half platformer, half puzzle game. There's this physics element. There's a whole bunch of different parts of different games, and a racer, and a pretty hardcore one at that when you really get into it. So it has so many different elements to it. And I think almost to a degree that some people might see it and just go, oh, it's a motorbike game. I don't like motorbikes. Therefore, it's not a game for me. I don't like motorbikes. Yeah. Sorry, motorbike, just whatever. But the game itself gives me so much more than just, a motorbike going across the screen. So, kind of weird. But once you see it and feel it, and the coolest thing for me is just watching people watch someone really good and then play it. And you're like, but you're using cheats. You've got some hacks happening, or your bike's got extra boosts. It's like, no, it doesn't. It's just physics. Yeah. But we've learnt and understood the physics to such a high degree that we can manipulate it to do just about anything you want.
Wow.
So,
excuse me. It's like one of what you say, about not liking bikes. I mean, I like bikes, but I saw this game ages and ages and ages ago, and that was the first thing that went through my head. Oh, it's just a bike game. So, like, I never went near it. And then it wasn't until the historian started saying, hey, I'm playing Trials. Like, come and have a look at Trials Rising. They started sending me clips and stuff like that. I was like, whoa, this isn't a bike game. Like, the bike is just a vehicle to, this, what exactly that you're doing in this game. And it's so cool to watch. And I can sit in front of a YouTube video and just go down a funnel and last for an hour, just watching people because, and I think his historian popped this in the chat. He said it's incredibly hard and frustrating, but when you make it that next step or that next 10 meters or whatever it happens to be, the feeling of elation that you get is almost euphoric.
The adrenaline rush,
Totally. And look, and as trials people, we still chase that. Like that becomes addictive. And what that does is it forces you to get better and better, because once you experience that, you're like, I want to feel that again. Yeah. But what the things that the things that used to make me feel like that no longer do.
Yeah.
So you kind of step up the difficulty and you go for the next challenge, and whether it's the next medal or the next difficulty level, or and something that I think is massively underrated in this game is the user created content. For those that don't know, the game ships with the same editor that the developers used to build the game. So at your disposal is like thousands, like I think it was 9,000 objects or something, and thousands of tracks that people are uploading all the time. And some of them are as good or better than the ones the developers are making, and they're all free as well.
Oh, that's great.
It's an infinite. And again, I don't come across as overly sales pitchy, but it's one of those things that just gives you so many different ways to play it and enjoy it. It just keeps giving you more and more, and you can always find harder and harder challenges. And I'll tell you, I've been writing for 10 years. There is still tracks in the game I can't complete. There is still so many things out there that I've just pretty much given up and said, you know what, I'm just going to invest my time in helping others, because the whole those who can't do teach, I teach.
Right. Now, we want to get to how people watching and listening, if they're Trials fans, can actually get involved with you and the community. But we're both nostalgic gamers. Like our gaming prowess goes back decades.
Decades, in my case, yes.
And just while we've been talking about this and, got the picture of the bike on the screen, all that sort of stuff, I don't know if you played this game. Do you remember a game called Excitebike?
I don't. But
no?
I would love to show you something.
What?
Because one of the guys in the Trials community, a guy called Calzone, has just released a track a couple of weeks ago that he built in the Trials editor, and it features Excitebike and other gamers. You guys would lose your mind if you saw this.
Get out!
I will. I'm not. I will find you the video right now while we're chatting. I mean, great for podcast, I'm sure. But I'll post it in chat, and you guys can have a look at it as well. But you will lose your mind.
That'd be amazing, because Excitebike was the game that I used to absolutely 100% hammer.
Yeah.
On the Nintendo Entertainment System when I was a kid, right? Like early 90s and stuff like that. And it was one of the first ones that I remember where it had a custom build inside the actual game, so you could actually like put jumps in and all that sort of stuff. And
well, it's really powerful. Like that kind of editor, I think it started in the 90s when the probably consoles and PCs became powerful enough to do it. And it's really powerful stuff, especially with the user generated content. Because as Professor says, you get stuff that you like rivals or even betters what the designers come up with in the original game.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And of course, long-time fans and players like Professor, I mean, I suppose, to a certain degree, you'd probably have a lot more innate knowledge about the game than even some of the developers actually have.
Yeah, it's actually interesting watching some of the really good riders. And over the years, what's ended up happening is sometimes that the riders are so good. And obviously, when you're trying to go for the fastest time, you're going to spend every moment you can to look for any exploit or any shortcut. They've found shortcuts in the game the developers didn't think were possible.
Yeah, wow.
That used to, get their fastest time. So there's been a few little instances like that as well. By the way, I just flicked you something on Twitter. So if you can look up that Twitter thing, I don't know if you can either get it on screen or just have a look yourselves. But Excitebike and others, and it is incredible.
I might be able to get it on screen. Hang on.
This sounds like one of those bastard games where you might play level X for an hour and get nowhere and go, that's it, I'm done with this game. And then next day, first try, boom.
And you're in.
You got it. I love it.
Have you ever had a big bout of rage?
Weirdly, if anything. I have a lot of people tell me that I'm relatively calm despite the frustration, and I actually credit like a decade of trial. So I probably did before I did the whole content creation side of things.
Yeah.
By the time I was probably 4 years in by the time I started a lot of this stuff. So I think by that point, it's one of these things that teaches you about failure and failure being okay, because it's part of the process, right? By now I've had ridiculous like near misses and so close, and you kind of just laugh it off because you're like, hey, if I did it before, I can do it again, and it's just a matter of time and repetition and persistence, and it's kind of weird, but I credit this with sort of changing my outlook on some of these things in life,
Yeah, that's really cool.
I am just going to see if I can make this happen. So
on Twitch.
I've got the You've just added a browser source. So bear with us if you're watching this on Twitch right now, because you're going to see some just random stuff. Let's get rid of that, because that doesn't look like it's going to work. I want to see if I can get display capture up. While I am trying to do this, mate, I am absolutely pumped to talk to you about E3. I mean, one of the things that we've spoken about for ages is, oh my goodness, how amazing would it be?
That was the other reason why we started this thing.
How amazing would it be to go to E3? And then that became, how amazing would it be to go to E3 on like some other company's dime? And then that became, how amazing would it be to go to E3, like to actually host something? You've bloody been there up on stage in front of the crowd at an E3. What is that like?
Yeah. Bloody scary when you realize that I'm a guy that works for an insurance company. Like that's the contrast is that I guess like when you're up there, it's he's just the guy in the gaming industry, and this is like no, maybe other people, maybe everyone just freaks out like this. Like, but yeah, for me it was such a weird experience.
Yeah.
To be able to do that. Now, do you want to talk about this thing real quick?
Yes. So I've found it. So this is, and it looks exactly like Excitebike.
Come have a look.
This is so spectacular. Yeah, you're up in the screen. Look at you go. So hang on a sec. Check this out, Dan. I'm going to hit. There we go. Look at this. So this was Excitebike.
But this is built in Trials Rising. This is a playable track in Trials Rising. Right now. Everybody that owns a game can go out and get this game right now.
Look at this.
Right? This level was built with a controller in someone's hand sitting on a couch. And
you are joking.
This from nothing. So, massive shout out to Calzone and all of the Trials builders. He even put in this little red button there, and when you hit that, it opens up a whole secret area, which is this this next bit. Yeah, this Donkey Kong piece only happens when you hit the red button.
So how does it? Because I've obviously seen the game, played a little bit of it.
Yep.
The regular version, even just the builds and everything, look nothing like this. How did he do this?
Right. You're going to have to, maybe there's a follow-up interview for you. I actually went back and I played this track and then watched it in the editor, so you can kind of manipulate the camera and have a look. I still couldn't explain it to you, but it's almost like he's created this on a very narrow, thin slice and then fixed the camera so it looks like a 2D shot. But it's actually all done in 3D, but he's just made it on like a very narrow sort of plane of existence.
Yeah, man, that is just...
That was really cool.
That is so cool. That's on just a bloody completely different level.
So just to talk about, the creativity of the Trials community and anything that you can imagine is possible. Now, obviously, skill, practice, all those other things. But even if you're like the rest of us, you can just go and play that stuff because it's all there when you want to play with it. So it's pretty cool.
Spectacular. So, look, you mentioned how do you think it would feel being a finance bloke going to E3 and getting up on stage and so. Had you ever done anything like that before in your life?
No. I mean, no, nothing like that. I mean, I came off stage, and I can talk you through the whole process. But
yes, please.
I came off stage, and I think I had a quick look on Twitch, and on the first couple of channels that were hosting this event live, there was like over 500,000 people watching.
Oh,
now I went out of my way to not do that.
No shit.
Because I didn't want to think about it. Look, it's terrifying. And this is the coolest thing is, I had no idea what goes into a production like that. Like you see this sort of glossy finished production, and that's it, and there's heaps of them, and it just gets swept up in, which is the sort of the game of Christmas of E3. But when I was involved a couple of months before, and actually the funny thing is they didn't ask me if I wanted to do it. They spoke to me. I was there earlier in, I think, March that year or February that year, and they said, "Hey, we're trying to organize something where we could get you to E3." And the idea was that it was going to be like they've got like a Ubisoft lounge, so off the show floor, they've got their own little place for all Ubisoft stuff, and maybe I'd have a stall and I could teach people and engage them with the game, and just be cool. And I was like, man, that'd be amazing.
Yeah.
Again, E3, someone's dime. I'm like, let's have it. So I'm there. I'll figure out work. Let's make it happen. And then like a couple of weeks later, I was like, hey, I need to plan ahead of time, work and family and everything else. Can you just confirm what's happening with E3? And they're like, oh, yeah. So the current plan is that you and the creative director present the game and announce it to the world. Like, that's not That's not what we discussed. I remember, wake up in the first thing in the morning, check my emails. I'm like, no, that's not real. Absolutely. Just freaked out for quite a while. I even reached out to, a mate of mine who's, internet famous, I guess, and said, like, how do you do it? Like, have you got any advice for me? Because I've never done anything like this. And it was cool. The advice he gave me was, look, people that are watching you want you to succeed.
100%.
Like, yep.
All right, cool. No one wants you to fail. No one, they're not hoping for the best or the worst. So, yeah, I took that for what it was and ran with it. So, but awesome experience. But 2 months of rehearsals, which you don't realize goes into it, for a 6-minute segment we had. Countless script writes and rewrites, Skype sessions at least weekly for rehearsals. I was there for, I think we had 3 days of rehearsals in LA in the theater itself. So there was sort of the first day was kind of just like a segment piece. And then I think we had 3 full rehearsals and probably 1 or 2 dress rehearsals before it actually went live. So, and that's the part you don't see all of that stuff. Happening behind the scenes. It's far bigger and far more involved than what I expected.
And once it's done, does that mean then the rest is fair game? Like, are you allowed to just get over to whatever you want to see at E3? Like, you're done now.
Yeah, well, because the press conferences all happened beforehand. So I don't have any connections with any of those guys. So I think the closest I got to the Xbox One is I walked past the theater as people were lining up, and I looked in the door and went, that line's pretty small. I could probably sneak in there, and then didn't. But got tempted to do that because that's probably that was the one I wanted to go and check out. But outside of that, I've pretty much got the time. I mean, I think I was working sort of between the show floor and mostly at the Ubisoft, whatever they call the Ubisoft lounge or whatever it was. And that's where they've got YouTube people. Actually, it's funny. I had. What was his name? Captain Sparkles, I think it is, but a YouTube guy with like 10 million subscribers.
Yep.
I'm in the background of his video. I had no idea who he was at the time. I'm a huge trial fan. I'm really frustrated. I didn't know this at the time. But people started sending me this video, and they're like, dude, you're in the video. And there's a guy with 10 million subscribers, and I'm in the background on my phone, just bored, just sitting around, just doing nothing. And I'm like, and so missed opportunities as well. But that's what it can be like, and that's the weird thing too. When you're in and around like an E3 type place, you don't know who you're standing next to. But still, most people I spoke to, I have no idea who they are or whether whatever. Yeah, we sort of you go your separate ways. But there's such a sort of concentration of gaming people, media people, internet personalities, whatever. It's pretty crazy. Experience to sort of go through.
Amazing.
And one of the cool things I'll mention too, I went there with Ubisoft in 2013, as they've got like I think they call it now a star player program, but I think it was called something different when I went. But it was kind of like a community thing where they get a couple of people from different games and they send them off there, and we become the ambassadors or whatever for, and really just as a thanks for our sort of community work. So I went there as part of that program in 2013, and then 5 years later, got to sort of give a shout out to those effectively the 2018 class that was sitting in the crowd, which is where I was 5 years before. So it was actually really cool, and it was an important part for me for my script as part of that show to just acknowledge that like a few years ago, I was someone that was sitting down in the crowd saying, "Hey, how easy, like once in a lifetime opportunity to get to E3." To be front row at a press conference, like, VIP treatment, all this stuff from Ubisoft. And I'm like, man, how amazing was that? And when you're watching that, like, to you, that's the peak.
Yeah.
And now I'm the guy up. Like, it was crazy. And I just really wanted to just acknowledge that in the moment because that was a really cool thing to think about how far this has gone.
It's surreal, isn't it?
Yeah. And such a relatable thing as well. There'd be so many people in the crowd there. Streamers, gamers, ones that have made it, like well, and I say made it, like, like we're talking your 100,000, your 200,000, all that sort of stuff, because they obviously get invited to all this sort of stuff, and they're probably sitting there thinking to themselves, that was me. That was me just a few years ago. Now, Professor, for people who are watching right now or who are listening to this and they want to get stuck in Professor Fat Shady, how can they get involved in University of Trials?
Well, What's the best place? I mean, I'm probably most active on Twitter, at Unia Trials. YouTube is where a lot of the sort of videos, and more recently it's VODs from streaming. So at Unia Trials on Twitter, Unia Trials on Twitch, and University of Trials on YouTube. And I think it's Unia Trials on Instagram as well. So I think they're kind of the main places. And really, it's just sort of, get in, join in on a stream, have a chat to the good people that are participating as well. And get involved. All skill levels welcome. And I think, what am I, 300 plus videos plus all of the in-game tutorial content. So even if you haven't played Trials before, plenty of opportunity to get stuck in. Learn a lot along the way.
Love it.
Sensational. Excuse me. Now, before we say goodbye to you, sir, we do have to hit you with one thing.
The big question.
The big question. This is the Game in Australia big question. Don't be nervous.
I'm nervous.
Everybody cops it. I'm nervous too.
Yeah.
I never know what somebody's going to answer this question. You know what I mean? Like it's and it's just such a defining moment.
It is.
You know what I mean? It really says a lot about a person. It really does. And I mean, so far, it's been extraordinary having you on here. We've heard so much, and now to meet you and speak to you in person, we don't want to destroy what we've seen. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But Professor Fat Shady,
yep.
What is your favourite part of the chicken?
Oh, actually, really easy to answer, but I don't know what it's called.
The parson's nose. Is it the fatty bit at the bum?
Is it? I don't know. It's the two little cups.
What?
It's the two little cup bits underneath.
Yeah, I know where. Yeah.
Well, hang on.
You scoop it out.
Yes.
Yeah, it's incredible.
It is incredible.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
It's a good answer too.
Nobody's ever said that before.
No, they haven't.
None of this wing and bloody leg business. That little bit, mate, that is the bit. Me and my mother-in-law have to fight over who gets them.
Oh, really?
The Skittles says it's the oysters.
Skittles knows everything, so that's
yeah. Far out. That is
fantastic answer.
I won that question, right? Like that is the answer, I think.
Yeah, that's an absolute ripper. I mean, what are you?
I'm a breast guy.
I'm a breast guy too, but I like a lot. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I like the whole thing.
Like just give me the goddamn chicken. Yeah. Brad Hill, a.k.a. Professor Fat Shady, what an absolute pleasure.
It was an honour.
Thank you so much. It was an honour, and thank you so much for the insight tonight about University of Trials, about Trials Rising, about your journey to E3, about your career, the whole thing. If you're watching, if you're listening right now, get along at Uni of Trials to all the social media and connect. Check it out and get stuck in. Thank you so much, mate. I'm sure we'll speak again soon.
Mate, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it. Had a good time.
Good on you, mate.
See you later, Professor.
Later, boys.